After an amazing season and leading my team to a high school state championship, I had offers from colleges all across the country. And after sitting down with my family and deciding where I wanted to go, I decided I wanted to be a Wisconsin Badger, and I couldn't wait to get started on my freshman year. Interim head coach Barry Alvarez promised me the starting position, but when I arrived, I learned that I would be the backup. So in week 1 against UMass, I was stuck holding the balls. But luckily, we had a massive lead, which allowed me to take my first collegiate snap, where I got folded like a lawn chair. Practice was my best friend, as I knew it would be my opportunity to show all the coaches that I had what it took to lead this team to a championship. I found a lot of success early and often, as I would dot up the defense for touchdown after touchdown. I was hoping to impress them enough to where I could get a position battle, and that's exactly what I did. But first, I had to go through one more week of holding balls. Luckily, we were playing in an FCS school, and at the end of the third, the coach pulled all the starters, allowing me an entire quarter to lead my team down the field for my first collegiate touchdown. Or so I thought, because on this play, while completing a pass to my tight end, I would get absolutely T-boned by this walking semi-truck, and I had a hard time walking afterwards, and my day was over. Head coach Alvarez was nice enough to let me rest for a day or two before doing the position battle, and I knew I needed to be locked in if I wanted to win this, as we were playing a ranked team next week, and I wanted to be the starter. And that's exactly what happened. With just a few plays left, I connected with my tight end to seal the deal and become the starting quarterback. We took on number 24 ranked Arizona State University, and I may have let the nerves get to me early on. The stadium was a lot louder than I thought it would be, but I didn't let it stop me from marching down the field for our first touchdown of the day. And just before half, I had the opportunity to lead my team down the field to tie up the score. And that's exactly what I did, as I threw up this 50-50 ball to my wide receiver, who went up and caught it. At the beginning of the third, I wanted to build off the momentum that we had, but that was before the ASU defender read my eye the entire play and jumped the route for my first pick of the day. I would like to say things got better, but they didn't, as we were down 11 points halfway through the fourth quarter, and I was stuck trying to lead a comeback victory. I started it off with an Eric White touchdown, bringing us within one possession, and with 25 seconds left in the game, I had to go 94 yards down the field, where I started the drive off with a massive gain to Chris Washington, and on the final play of the game, we were set for a Hail Mary, where I loaded my arm up and launched it 20 yards short as we fell to the Sun Devils. Coach Alvarez made us practice in the rain as punishment for losing to Arizona State, and although there was a lot of people complaining about the weather, I used it to my advantage. I was more focused on getting better and improving my skills, such as accuracy and precision, because I was trying to afford to upgrade my skill set after the game, and that is exactly what I was able to do with these two massive boosts. The next game, we were at home versus Purdue, and within the first couple plays, I was absolutely violated by this walking fridge, and I followed it up by making one of the worst reads of my career, as I would throw a pass directly into double coverage. Purdue would go on to score from that turnover, and I was stuck trying to fix my own mistakes. A little bit later down this drive, on a 3rd and 12, I was able to locate Daniel Nugent up the middle for our first score of the day. A little bit later, we were down 14-10, and I was doing my best to beat him as I found Chris Washington over the middle and dropped a dime straight into Eric White's breadbasket, where we were able to finish the drive off with a Quentin Berry rushing touchdown. Purdue would go on to score quickly, and I was in my very first college shootout. But unfortunately for Purdue, they didn't call me Pistol Pete for nothing, as I found Brian Falkus for the lead going into half. But with 40 seconds left, we were down by 4 points, and it was my chance to be the hero they didn't ask for, but the hero they were going to get. On this 2nd and 10, I failed to see that the safety dropped back, and I chose the wrong time to play catch, as we fell to the Boilermakers, and I started my college career 0-2. The next week, we took on number 2 ranked Ohio State, and after a very lackluster first quarter, I was able to lead the team down the field, where on this 3rd and 3, I would attempt to scramble, but get crushed and injured. By the time I came back in, halfway through the third, we were down 2 possessions, and I was worried that if I did not lead a comeback, I would lose my starting position. So I did what I had to do to find Daniel Nugent in the end zone for our first score. And unlike my typical defense, they actually were locking up Ohio State. So I had another opportunity to lead down the field, and that's exactly what I did, as I found Daniel Nugent in the corner for our second touchdown of the day. After that touchdown, Ohio State would go on a long drive, resulting in no points, giving us the ball back with just under 3 minutes. After getting our kicker's range, I was determined to make this the final drive of the game, and with a little help from Ohio State's head coach not using timeouts, we were able to burn the clock before Quentin Berry rushed it in for the major upset and my very first college victory, and my coach was ecstatic. The next week, we took on the Northwestern Wildcats, and I couldn't believe it. I was the starting quarterback of a top 25 team. After the Ohio State victory, It's like we were finally clicking as a team as we moved down the field quickly, and on this first and goal, I found Daniel Nugent for the first score of the day. Fast forwarding to halfway through the second, we were up 14-7, and it felt really good to not be behind on the scoreboard for once. But I believe it made me play a little bit too relaxed as I would roll out and make a bad read for my first interception of the day. I learned that it would be okay because at the beginning of the fourth, we were up by 4 points and moving the ball down the field. Where on the second and goal, I was able to hand it off to Quentin Berry, and he would rush it in to seal the deal as we got the victory over Northwestern. The next week, we were up to rank 18, and we were traveling to Memorial Stadium where we were taking on Illinois in a Big Ten matchup. Halfway through the first, we were down by 7, but I moved us down quickly before finding Daniel Nugent up the middle to get us in the red zone. Where later on, I was able to hand it off to Quentin Berry to tie. On this next drive, just before half, I was heavily relying on Daniel Nugent to get us down the field as I found him on this major gain, and on this 3rd and 10, I would find him again up the middle uncovered where I thought he would get in, but he didn't. So I dumped it off on him for this first and goal for the touchdown. At the beginning of the third, we had the ball, and I wanted to build off the momentum that we had going into half. So I found Eric White on this 3rd and 9, and on this 3rd and 10, I noticed that Brian Falcus burnt the safety, and I sent a laser over to him for a 53-yard touchdown. And my defense would eventually collapse where we were tied with a minute left in the game, and I chose to try to float it over the top before getting picked off and sending this game into overtime. Illinois would go on to score, and the pressure was on me to answer back, where I found Daniel Nugent up the middle for a touchdown. And in second overtime, I went right back to Daniel Nugent to get us within the 10 before going back to him yet again up the middle for another touchdown. I was left on the sideline as I watched my defense give up multiple touchdowns going into third overtime and we were down by 8. I delivered a quick strike over to Daniel Nugent before on this 2-point conversion. I waited a little bit too long to scramble and my little legs couldn't get it, and we failed to win. The next week, we had to travel to Kinnick Stadium to take on the Iowa Hawkeyes, and everyone was pretty bummed that we lost our top 25 ranking, but I knew that if I let us down the field, it would lift everyone's spirits, and that's exactly what I did when I found Eric White for the touchdown. Sadly, that's as good as it got, as we were down by 10 points with just 1 minute left in the half. And I was trying my best to silence the Iowa fans as they were making the stadium shake with all their excessive screaming and cheering. And on this 1st and 10, I found Daniel Nugent wide open in the middle on the goal line where I thought he got in, but he didn't, and we had to settle for a field goal. At the end of the third, we were still down by a touchdown, and I was doing whatever I could in order to move us down the field for the tying score. While in the red zone, I ran my go-to play in order to find Daniel Nugent for the touchdown. With a minute left in the game, we were down by a touchdown before I saw that Chris Washington burnt the defender and I dropped an absolute dime to him to get us into the red zone. And on 2nd and goal, I found my favorite target, Daniel Nugent, for the tying score. We found ourselves in overtime where Iowa would score first and I was set to respond, but the moment I let go of this ball, I swear the game slowed down as I watched the defender jump the route to pick me off, and we lost our 2nd straight overtime game. We were set to bounce back as we were hosting BYU this week, and things couldn't have started out any better as I found Daniel Nugent over the top to get us into BYU territory. A little bit later down the drive, I would find Daniel Nugent again to set us up in the red zone, and Chris Washington right on the goal line before Quentin Berry would rush it in. But my defense was in competition with my offensive line to see who could torture me more, as on the 2nd and 12, I would get crushed. And on the very next play, on 3rd and 22, I would try to force this ball, resulting in an interception for our 3rd turnover of the day. We were getting stomped out by BYU on our own turf, and I was doing whatever I could to just get off the field for the day. After breaking for this massive gain, I would eventually run it in for the touchdown, but we wouldn't see the ball again as we dropped a 3rd straight to BYU. The next week, we took on Indiana, and after a lackluster first quarter, I was finally able to get us on the board halfway through the second, finding Eric White for the touchdown. But moving the ball today has been extremely difficult as my O-line was doing whatever they could to shave points, allowing me to get crushed for massive losses. I was doing whatever I could to persevere through all the sacks as I threw up a 50-50 to Daniel Nugent to get us inside the red zone. And on 3rd and goal, I was able to roll out and see that they left Chris Washington wide open in the corner of the end zone to take the lead before half. At the beginning of the fourth, we were tied at 14, and I was worried about losing my starting position as we dropped the last 3. So I stopped relying on my offensive line to protect me, so I used my legs to scramble out to get this first down that resulted in just a field goal. With 33 seconds left, we got a defensive turnover, and I was able to find JT Wallace in the end zone for the go-ahead score, and we walked away with the victory. In next week's game, I was in my very first rivalry game against Minnesota, a rivalry known as Battle for the Axe. A traditional rivalry game that's been going on since 1890, where the winner would receive a giant Paul Bunyan axe to take home as a trophy. Wisconsin has won the last 10 since 2004, so the pressure was on me to continue that streak. So after leading my team down the field on our first drive for a touchdown, I continued the trend by finding Daniel Nugent up the middle that resulted in a rushing touchdown by Quentin Berry. I continued to dot up the defense, finding large gains and moving us down the field. And just before half, I was able to find Eric White to set us up for a first and goal where I would roll out and take it in for a rushing touchdown. That trend would continue into the fourth, where we were up 35-14, and I found Walker across the middle of the field, and he did his best Derrick Henry to throw the defender off of him to secure a massive gain. A little bit later on, it was 3rd and 5. I was able to escape the pocket and swerve the defense for my second rushing touchdown of the day, as we were able to crush Minnesota and get the victory for the battle for the Axe. The whole team was excited, and we were all celebrating, because not only did we get to take home the Paul Bunyan Axe, we also became bowl eligible. In the next week's game, we took on Penn State in my very first snow game, and let me tell you, it was cold out here. Being a quarterback from Texas, I wasn't quite prepared for this kind of weather, and I think my body would let me know that on this 1st and 10 play, I would get crushed, that would result in a fumble, and I was having a hard time getting up afterwards. By the time I got back in the game, we were down by 13 with just 1 minute left, and I thought it couldn't get any worse until I watched Daniel Nugent cough up the ball, and I stood there in disbelief. By the time I tried to track down the defender, he was too far away, and they just added to a humiliating loss. In the next week, we took on Syracuse in the Beef O'Brady Bowl, and realistically, I think I was most excited about there being no snow. The first drive started out amazing as I launched this 50-50 ball to Eric White, who mossed the receiver, which resulted in me being able to roll out and find my favorite target, Daniel Nugent, for our first score of the game. And at the end of the first, we had all the momentum where I saw that they left Chris Washington wide open, he shed a tackle, and was able to take this one all the way to the house. You would think Syracuse would take Chris Washington a little bit more serious after that big first touchdown, but he was able to do it all over again on the left side of the field, taking this one in for a 64-yard touchdown. We were dominating on both sides of the ball, because after a defensive turnover, I was able to find Daniel Nugent in the end zone to go up by 24. You would think that would be it, but I found Chris Washington wide open down the field one more time for another 60-plus touchdown, and we ran away with this game. Even though the Beef O'Brady Bowl wasn't the most prestigious bowl game to win, we were all just excited to be able to bring home something after our up and down season, where there were a lot of growing pains and a lot of mistakes made, but we were still Beef O'Brady champions. Chris Washington would win the player of the game with 209 yards and 3 touchdowns, and I couldn't wait to get to my sophomore year to see how far we could go.